Alright guys, we'll give a couple seconds for Ruma to jump on and we will get started. Boom, boom. What's up guys? Just waiting on Ruma to jump on and we will get started. Just going to go over a few different things in regards to the legal end, mortgages, and all that fun stuff. So if you guys have any questions in the meantime, we'll get cranking away. And right on. Accept. Boom.
Boom.
Hello, hello.
What's going on?
Good. Staying busy. Never a dull moment. Thursday before craziness with all the week. We actually have our sales rally going on at the same time.
What is a sales rally?
So once a year with corporate, with my company, with PRMG, what we'll normally do is we'll have a lot of the top producers, loan officers, different and all that fun stuff, kind of come on, recognize them for their hard work. Recap in 2021, we actually have an awesome presenter, Barry Habib, who's like a top industry expert. We got him coming on at the same time, kind of going over a lot of different market predictions with all the fun stuff going on within the market, rates, inflation, which I know we'll dive into a little bit more. But looks like we got some people jumping in. You're still there, right? Because I'm just getting unable to join on my end. Let me see. Technology is not our friend.
Yeah, for some reason it just kicked me off.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it likes you. Or maybe our sales rally wasn't as fun. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you. What about you?
Okay. Yep, we're good.
Okay, cool.
Ruma, if you want to kind of introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi, everyone. To my so far 10 people watching who all know me. Awesome. Thanks for joining. I'm Ruma Mazumbar. I'm a real estate attorney, solo practitioner who focuses on residential and commercial property purchases and sales. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. I've been practicing law for like 5 years now. Started my own practice about 6 months ago and joined up with PRMG as a great lender option for a lot of clients I work with. And, you know, someone who's got a pulse on the market and who is ready to talk rates whenever my clients have questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, I know you just started 6 months ago, but you're not naive to the industry, right? You've been kind of doing it for quite some time.
Yeah, I've always been practicing real estate. I come from a family of people in real estate, mortgage brokers as well. So I've kind of always been subconsciously in that realm. Comes naturally to me, and happy to talk any questions that anyone might have.
Awesome. What made you kind of want to shift into joining on your own, running things on your own with your own practice?
Honestly, it was just because, you know, I worked at a big firm in New York City. I was doing a lot of real estate litigation at the time, and the burnout is real. I mean, when you're grinding, it's real in any job, so to speak. So I was looking for a different kind of grind and burnout, I guess. And, you know, I started working directly with the clients where before I always used to do, you know, kind of like the research, writing, and whatnot, and my boss would get to present it. But here I get to be hands-on with my clients, give them advice, educate them about real estate. I deal with a lot of first-time home buyers who are just like, Ruma, I don't know anything. Like, where do I start? Who do I talk to? So it's been really great to have that interaction, and really just when you get to closing, it's just such a nice feeling when people walk away with keys and everyone's like really happy with how the transaction went.
Awesome. Awesome. No, that's great. I mean, I'll tell you on our end. So we handle a lot of residential predominantly, 1 to 4 units, very, very extensive different loan programs. I've been doing this for quite some time myself, actually strictly with PRMG. Growing our team. We've got a team of 16 loan officers, very, very solid operations teams, in-house underwriting and processing. My background actually comes from having a master's in risk and compliance and political science. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but could have been in your shoes, but I ended up sticking with the mortgage world, which I'm blessed with. And yeah, so PRMG, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac Direct. So we do underwrite our own loans, process our own loans, service our own loans as well. Last year, actually for 2021, company-wide, we did just over 16.5 billion. We are directly licensed within my branch to do New Jersey, Florida, and Pennsylvania. But we also do a lot of throughout the entire nation, actually 48 states, excluding New York and Wyoming. So that's kind of that. So you want to tell me a little bit more about the attorney review process? What are some of the things that you kind of you would recommend clients to get into?
Yeah, so, I think starting from the beginning, like I often get the question, like, do I really need you? Like, do I have to have an attorney? Because, people are always like watching out for expenses that are incurred during the home buying process, because it's a huge, huge expenditure. It's probably one of the biggest expenditures most people make. And so I always tell them, no, you don't necessarily need an attorney. The question is more so, should you have an attorney? And the answer is yes, you should have an attorney. It's a very complicated process. And ultimately, you're signing a contract, right? You don't know how it gets interpreted. And that's where I come in. So, realtors that put the contracts together, they have tons of experience and have been doing it for years. But when it comes into the legal interpretations and things falling down and like falling apart in inspection and things like that, that's where the attorneys come in and kind of explain what your rights are, how far you can go, what's important. But that's exactly what the attorney review period is for. So I get the contract the way that the, realtors have negotiated, or if it's like for sale by owner, there's no agents involved. So that's a place where you definitely want to hire a lawyer, because that's where we're kind of doing all the work for you, making sure the sellers are getting their COs and things like that. You might not even know there's like parts to the transaction that you need to get done to get to the end. So in attorney review, the basis of that is basically to review the form contract that comes in, and then look at, the inspection contingency and if it was waived or if it was limited, to look at the appraisal contingency. And especially when you're going for a mortgage and a loan to buy a home, the lender is always going to ask for an appraisal. So making sure that you have, as a buyer, room to negotiate if your home for some reason doesn't appraise at what the realtor recommended or what your offer was accepted at, right? Then you kind of have problems with, which Abdel will go into, as we move along. So I review the contract, make sure there's no contradicting terms, and then make sure basically that I'm protecting whoever I'm representing, the buyer or the seller, in case, excuse my language, things go to shit and the deal falls apart, right? Like that's the point of attorney review. And then as we go along, well, I see a question. So as we go along, then I communicate with all the parties, including the lender, titers, and anyone else that comes up in the process before we get to closing. We got Taha asking, how fast is my attorney review turnover? I can get a letter done in less than half a day. So it can come in the morning, it can come in the afternoon. If something comes in like late at night, I'll try to do it. But you can definitely expect it'll go out first thing in the morning. But, I just got in a contract on Tuesday at like noon, and we were done with attorney review at 3 p.m. So.
Yep. That was actually, I was just going to say, because we just had one with Steph. Having a quick attorney review period.
I think you cut out.
How my service is coming in. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thanks, Liku.
Okay. Um, if I'm a client, what's the benefit of an attorney review process going quickly?
So, especially for buyers in this market, sellers are keeping backup offers. So if you don't move fast enough, you're going to lose it, you know? No one's going to wait around for you to get that letter out.
If I put an offer for, hypothetically, a home is 300 and I put an offer for 300 and it gets accepted, are you saying that somebody during that attorney review process can come in and basically negate my offer?
Yes, exactly. So some realtors are good. And you know, another thing that like you can keep in mind when you're working with your agents is, you know, they'll negotiate in that the seller can only accept backup offers, which gives you a little bit of time in order to get through the attorney review process. But yes, during attorney review, the seller or the buyer can cancel at any time. So you want to get through that attorney review period ASAP. And in New Jersey, you know, you do have a 3-day period in order to start attorney review, right? Once both parties have the contract. So that's just to get started. I mean, you can drag out attorney review, but no one really wants to do that because you're in
Right.
danger of losing your accepted offer.
Understood. Yep. I definitely see that all the time where we'll have an offer go out, offer get accepted, and then within that window, somebody comes in and offers more or offers maybe a conventional loan as opposed to FHA or less contingencies. And you know, we're kind of back to the drawing board. So speaking about contingencies, can you kind of tell us a little bit more about, obviously with the competitive market, we're seeing a lot of waivers of certain things, such as inspections and appraisals. What's kind of your thoughts on that from a legal perspective? Does it make sense for a client to waive and things on that nature?
I think you should always have the option to inspect a property. And that's something I'm always going to advise my clients. Ultimately, it's going to be the client decision whether they want to waive it or not. But I always say you should have the option to inspect because you can go see a house and see that it's like in great condition from the outside, but you know, you're not the expert unless you're a home inspector, you know, purchasing a home. But you know, that's where the expert comes in to really tell you what is, you know, working in that property, what needs to be replaced soon, like how the systems are working. And then, you know, a lot of days we've seen limited inspection, which I think is okay. And that's limiting it to like the structure, making sure like it's a structurally good, foundationally like built house. Also all the mechanical systems, plumbing and HVAC, heating, all that is working. And you know, we're just in a market where like the sellers aren't really going to fix a, you know, loose window or loose doorknob or something, anything a handyman can do, you know. So
Got it. And then
I
how about the appraisal side? Because that's probably the biggest one, right? So that example I used earlier, $300,000 home, and then clients come in and offer 320. What's kind of your suggestions? Because I'll kind of comment on the financing side, but what's kind of some of your suggestions on that side from the waiver perspective?
we've got a question. Let's see. What are the risks where people choose to waive the inspection? So, you know, when you waive inspection, that's it. You can't go back. If you move into the home, like you're moving into the home the way that it is. Like there's no asking to fix anything. You're just moving right into the next part of this transaction process, you know, and that might be next would be the appraisal and then the title commitment, and then you're just moving to closing. And then you move into your home, and then suddenly a month later, things start breaking down. And then you have no recourse really because you waived this contingency.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And then appraisal pretty much basically the same, right? So if you waive it entirely,
Yeah.
uh,
So what I tell my clients is if you're going to waive appraisal, make sure you have money.
yeah,
Make sure you're going to be able to make up whatever the bank decides is worth the house. So, you know, let your agent, if that's the person negotiating with you, know what is the maximum you're able to afford if the appraisal comes in low and you're overbidding the purchase price.
got it. Got it. Okay. So a couple things on our end from the financing side when it comes to waivers of appraisals. these are a lot of the different areas that we do from our end. The first thing is being able to obviously renegotiate the price with the seller if the appraisal is low. If you waived it, that's not an option. Bringing the difference to closing basically in cash. So the example I had given of a $300,000 home, 320. If the appraisal comes back at 300, the client must have the funds necessary to cover the $20,000 or have it looped in to what's called the loan to value. So you know how an FHA loan, the minimum down payment is 3.5%, which basically means the max that we can lend is 96.5% of the home. So if the house comes in appraised under by $20,000, the loan to value is going to essentially be out of whack, right? It's going to be too high. We can't lend more than 96.5%. Therefore, we have to have the client come up with the difference. Now, if you're a client who's putting 10% down and the house under appraises, what you can do is actually renegotiate the loan to value where you essentially bring 7% as a down payment. And then that remaining 3% can essentially be renegotiated to cover the shortage. What do you think about that? Because that's kind of what we've been doing. It works. Obviously, we let the agents know that this is what's going on with restructuring. It's kind of worked. Obviously, the other option is terminating the contract if you don't have a waiver of the appraisal or disputing it with the appraiser with their results, which we actually do commonly, and getting some of the comps. Any other suggestions that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I always like make sure to include the option to negotiate in case of an under appraisal because that's important. I mean, if the house is not what you're willing or what you agree to pay for it, then you should have the option to at least negotiate with the seller to bring it down. So I always say like don't waive it unless you're really financially sound. But if a majority of your money is coming from a loan or mortgage, then you should definitely think twice about waiving that. And then when it comes to negotiating, like, yeah, we'll get in touch with the lender, we'll get in touch with like the agent and see what we can do to figure out a workaround as long as we have some sort of option to negotiate.
Understood. Okay. And then from the financing side, usually what we see on our end, FHA conventional loan, right? There's a million programs out there. But for some mortgage knowledge, guys, FHA loan, again, one of the benefits of it is it allows you to put 3.5% as a down payment. Actually, your debt to income ratios, which is just essentially your total debt over your income, you can go as high as 56.9%. So you can literally make, for an example of a $10,000 income, you can have total debt of $5,600, which includes your mortgage payment and your total debt, and still qualify. Also, your credit score can be as low as 580, and you're still able to get an FHA loan. Conventional, one misconception, Rima, and I'm sure you probably run into this all the time, is people don't have to put 20% down to get a conventional loan. Do you get a lot of those questions where people assume that they're supposed to get that or put that down?
I usually end up with the client after they've decided how much they want to put down. So they've kind of spoken with you and figured out what they can and should put down in order to like work the numbers in their favor. But I had a question. So like, how do you know, you know what your scores are, whatever, but how do you know how much like you can afford?
So great question. So the things that we look at, there's what I usually tell people is there's certain things that banks are obligated to look at. Credit score minimum, like we just went over, and then qualifications in regards to credit, which is obviously your credit score, cash, which is how much money you currently have saved up for a down payment and your total closing costs, the capacity to repay the loan, which is based off of your debt to income, and then collateral, which is what we had just touched on in reference to the appraisal. Those are what's actually called the 4 C's of mortgages. So it's cash, you have enough money to close, credit, which is your credit score, capacity, which is your debt to income, and then collateral is the house worth it. So if you do check off on those 4s, there's a very high chance that you're able to qualify. So what we do is we take a mortgage application, we gather all the necessary information the client is looking for based on their revolving debt and their credit score. Thereafter, also home type. So you probably run into some condos or townhomes. Not condos or townhomes are eligible to get FHA financing because they're not approved with HUD to do FHA financing. So that's something that we go over with clients too. There's certain clients may necessarily not qualify for an FHA loan, whether it's credit score or too high debt. Then I have to tell them we need to revise our search and look for a single family home or look for FHA approved condos. So a lot of different variables. I usually tell somebody who's looking to get into the mortgage, first step is to actually work with a mortgage lender and establish a budget through a pre-approval. Thereafter, we'll be able to kind of set the expectation as to if you're looking for X, these are the necessary steps you need to do. Or if you're looking for X, yes, you do qualify based on X, Y, and Z parameters.
Okay, cool. So I was going to say, like, if I had clients, asking me to work out the math before they've even found a home, your place, like, you guys have the LOs that'll sit down and do kind of like a money consultation with people and figure it out.
So our consultations are 100% free. Especially in today's day and age, we do them on Zoom or via the phone, the full-blown conversation with the client. Really just, so we also do things also uniquely. So we work with a lot of clients who obviously want to buy tomorrow. And then we work with clients who want to buy in 6 months and a year. And what we do, one of the unique things is we actually will be able to issue a pre-qualification through a soft inquiry. And that's something that's big. So basically, we don't necessarily have to put a hard inquiry on a consumer's credit score, which will reduce their credit. For that instance, we can actually, if you're a little subconscious in regards to your credit score, you're not really sure if you're over that threshold of that 580 or 620, we're able to take a look at it. It does not affect your credit whatsoever. And thereafter, we'll be able to establish a procedure in place as to, let's bring utilization down here. Let's maybe get rid of X, Y, and Z liability. Being able to put that map together for the client to put them in the best necessary steps when they are looking to strike.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's really helpful to know.
No, absolutely. Thank you. So, and then first-time home buyers, right? I know you had mentioned it first. From a legal perspective, what do you feel like is some of the common mistakes that a lot of first-time home buyers make on the legal end that you would recommend to kind of avoid?
Yeah, I mean, waiving contingencies when they don't know what it means. So, they'll waive contingencies, and offer gets accepted, and then they'll come to me and be like, I wasn't really sure like what that meant. Like, I'll still be able to do my inspection, right? And it's like, no, you waived that option. You can't even send anyone in now.
Yeah.
That's always one. Yeah, I feel like it's contingencies in this day and age, and then I think along the way, we figure out different problems with like their financing and having to bring on another borrower.
Yeah. And that's something I think kind of touching base on, because I don't think it's just legal. You also have to kind of dabble your hands sometimes on the title side too, right? Especially from what I've seen. So what are some of the things that you're running into with that?
So basically with title, a lot of times with my home buyers will run like the title search, and then sometimes there will be a lien on the property or mortgage on the property, and the seller might not even know about this mortgage on their property. We just had an issue about that. And my biggest thing is telling the buyer to like slow down, because they'll want to rush me to the closing table because their lease might be up, they need to like close on the home ASAP, like they need a place to live. So that I get, but then I have to like sit down and explain to them that like, if there's a mortgage on this property and we don't figure out how to take care of it, or make sure that we put some funds in escrow at closing in order to cover it, like this is going to be your problem, and you take ownership of this mortgage that is not under your name, that you never took out, but is simply on the property because the prior owner forgot to pay it, didn't know it existed, lost track of it, who knows, right? So it's always getting them to like slow down and explaining the issue to them. Other times we have chain of title issues. For example, the prior owner, two prior owners, right? There was like husband and wife, and then suddenly the wife is missing on the deed when it was passed down to the prior owner. And they're like, whatever, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, it is a big deal, because who knows if this person is still alive, they would have a claim to your property because they didn't give permission for the property to even be sold to these current owners who are selling you the property. So we've had to run down hospital records, calling townships to see if this person exists and like figuring out exactly what is the situation. And then, you know, title policies are issued with exceptions, meaning that, you know, if this person comes back, you're not covered. So you want to make sure you're working with the title company to actually cover any sort of situation like chain of title issues as well.
Yeah, I was going to say you're probably seeing that predominantly a lot more within the last 2 years, right? Than when you were in New York, because sellers, I think, sometimes have no idea
Yeah,
from conditions of property to titles on properties, and they're more or less kind of winging it, right? And then I'm definitely seeing that a lot more on our end because we'll get the file done, clear to close in 21, 30 days. We usually do, and then seller can't close because of a cloud on title or a judgment or a lien or a mortgage that they didn't know about, and then we're kind of at a standstill at that point.
exactly. I just had an issue where there was like a $50,000 mortgage that hadn't been paid, and it was a lien on the house. We closed, but we also put like $55,000 in escrow to make sure, you know, from the seller's proceeds that they work on discharging the loan. And like we just got it discharged, and the title policy was just issued. So,
Yep.
you
Yeah,
know,
and we've seen a lot of, and not a lot of title companies will actually be able to hold the escrows so they don't assume the risk. A lot of them you'll be on delays, and then you're running into a lot of common underwriting problems. So, rate extension issues, where if your rate is locked, and then it's locked to a specific time frame, and we have to go through extensions, so on and so forth. Other common first-time homebuyer errors we'll see is you had mentioned it earlier, which is if they're adding a co-borrower to the loan, but the co-borrower is kind of naive to what they're getting themselves into. Especially from a legal perspective, right? So if I'm buying a house and I want to add my friend or a cousin, what would be your recommendation? So they're basically responsible for the loan just as much as that original buyer, correct?
correct. Yeah. So even if they're not living in the house, which, you know, presumably they're not, they're still going to be on the mortgage, and they're going to be on the note, which is the promise to pay back the loan. So they're still fully responsible, even if you default and don't pay 1 month. Like the bank is going to come after them, and you're basically start a litigation saying you breached a contract, which is the note.
Got it. Got it. And then estimated closing timeframes. What are you kind of seeing within your end? So the norm, right, is usually 30-day mortgage commitment, 45-day closing.
Yep.
And that's typical, right? Especially if they're using like the standard real estate contract with the National Association of Realtors.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen it. Yeah, I mean, I've seen almost like less than 30 days when like everything goes very smoothly. But yeah, typically 30 to 45 days is
Okay.
closing. Commercial is always longer, especially if
Yep.
there's financing involved. We do 90 days there.
Understood. Understood. So, if now, can you comment a little bit more because there's a lot of things that are coming up for like UNOs, use and occupancies, and stuff like that. If I'm a homeowner and the seller doesn't want to move out for a month, what would be would that be an option for me to recommend during my offer, doing a free UNO or a per diem UNO?
So when I have a client who yeah, doesn't the seller's like not going to move out right at closing, I usually say we should wait until they vacate, because once you close, then your mortgage starts running,
Hmm.
and you know, you're still responsible for that, and you're not even living in the home. And then there's no certainty that the seller will move out, right? Even if they only sign a 1 month use and occupancy, right? So then you get kind of caught up in all of these like basically tenant issues, and then you can't move into your home. So I always try to tell my clients, like, yes, I get you want to rush in, but like I wouldn't commit to a contract where the seller's like, yeah, I might need like 2 or 3 more months, or I might even need another month, you know, especially when they're asking for, I think it's like, I think the lender only allows 60 days.
Correct. Yeah, especially if it's an FHA loan, um, owner occupancy must be established within 60 days.
Right, because if it's longer than that, then it's kind of deemed an investment property,
Right.
and your loan will completely change based on that. So I always say, yeah, max 60 days, but then think about all of these things in case they don't leave. Then what are you going to do?
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you for blessing us with a lot of that knowledge. Again, guys, on our end, some of the benefits that we've had working with Ruma and her, superstar, having instant access to her phone, email, understanding what's going on in the transaction. Some of the benefits of working predominantly with a solo practitioner is her being directly involved with a transaction, as opposed to kind of going through chains of commands of some sort where things kind of get lost within the communication. Super familiar with financing portion with the background of being in the industry, and also familial background too. So yeah, and that teamwork mentality obviously is a big one.
Yeah, I will say working with PRMG, the first thing that you do is you get everyone on the same email chain, whether they want to be on it or not. So, I think that's really great from a lender perspective, because other lenders kind of just work in their lane and they don't know anyone else that's involved in the transaction. But yeah, oftentimes because I come from a background where I've worked with or live with and know mortgage brokers very well, I always try to get involved and know who the lender is and who my contact there is, especially when I'm representing the buyer, because, they'll come to me with questions and I'm like, okay, I need to reach out to your lender to get some clarification.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. I'll try to extract this so everybody who was on here, you guys can revert back to it. A lot of information. Hopefully we'll have you again and we'll rock and roll and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. Talk
Thanks,
soon.
guys. Have a great day.